We want UN Tourism Secretary General Zurab Polikasvili out. Former UNWTO SG Francesco Frangialli and Taleb Rifai explain why. It saddens us to witness the state of our beloved UNWTO over the past 8 years. The open letter by two former UNWTO Secretary Generals, Francesco Frangialli and Taleb Rifai, is a powerful message to UN tourism member states, tourism ministers, and members of the UN Tourism Executive Council, and a warning to maintain the integrity of the organization in critical times. Open letter by Francesco Frangialli and Taleb Rifai. Professor Francesco Frangialli, Han UNWTO Secretary General. Dr. Taleb Rifai, former UNWTO Secretary General. Travel and tourism are the main activities in the world economy today. Following the World Travel and Tourism Council, WTTC, estimates, it accounts for 10 to 11% of global GDP and employment. More reasonable estimates based on the methodology of the Tourism Satellite Account give 6 to 7% of the total GDP, which is still a significant figure. In 2024, 1.4 billion international arrivals were registered worldwide, resulting in $1,900 billion in receipts. At the end of the 60s and during the early 70s, many countries, seeing that their tourism activity was growing, began to pay attention to the sector and felt the need to enhance cooperation among countries by establishing an intergovernmental organization. This led to the creation of the World Tourism Organization, WTO, over 5 years from the adoption of its statutes in 1970 to the beginning of its activities in 1975. The two signatories of this statement had the opportunity to participate actively in the process within their own governments, and later with the WTO contributing to increasing the weight of the tourism sector and the international institution that represents it. Both of us served as Secretary Generals of the World Tourism Organization for 2 decades. In 2004, we transformed the institution into a specialized agency of the United Nations, renaming it UNWTO. We are deeply concerned about the events that have unfolded since Zurab Pololikashvili's election in 2017. It saddens us to witness the state of our beloved UNWTO over the past 8 years. We are proud that under our 2 mandates, tourism has gained recognition from the international community. Ignored at the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 and absent from the UN Millennium Development Goals, tourism emerged on the international scene in 2002 with the International Year of Ecotourism and the Plan of Action adopted by the UN at its Johannesburg summit. Tourism's role was consequently enshrined in the Sustainable Development Goals. Its final recognition came in 2004 when the World Tourism Organization was converted into a full-fledged agency of the UN system. WTO became UNWTO. The recent appellation of UN Tourism does not bring anything new. It's a farce since an amendment to its statutes has not modified the organization's name. In the present statement, we shall address the issues of the legitimacy of the current leadership, the management of the institution, and its representativeness. We shall also call for a better World Tourism Organization. 1. Legitimacy of Mr. Pololikashvili. The current Secretary General's initial election was clearly flawed. During the selection process by the Executive Council, Mr. Pololikashvili benefited from eliminating an African candidate from the running, which was an illegal and irresponsible maneuver. Consequently, as the other candidate from the same region was deemed unacceptable by many members, Mr. Pololikashvili was appointed by default. The proper election by the General Assembly was conducted by applause, ignoring the individual and secret ballot required by the statutes and requested by a member state, which should have sufficed to carry out a voting process that did not take place. Mr. Pololikashvili was not the origin of this illegal procedure but clearly benefited from it. Eturbonews.com. In his re-election bid 4 years later, Mr. Pololikashvili subtly manipulated the process by using the excuse of the COVID-19 pandemic, preventing a fair and open competition. The question has now arisen whether the incumbent Secretary General is entitled to run for a 3rd term. This issue is complex. In 2005, the General Assembly adopted an amendment to the statutes that limits the Secretary General's term to 2 consecutive 4-year mandates. However, this limitation was meant to be provisional, pending ratification by the members. The amendment has not been ratified, and at the most recent General Assembly session, Mr. Pololikashvili was authorized to participate in the election. Legally, he is entitled to run. However, doubts remain about the legitimacy of this move, given that a revision of the statutes is underway. From our perspective, Mr. Pololikashvili should have honored the intentions of the supreme organ of our institution. Unfortunately, he has shown a lack of respect for this principle by putting forward his candidacy. 2. Management of the organization. The current management of the World Tourism Organization raises multiple serious concerns. The first one relates to the successive choices of its leadership structure. Under Zurab Pololikashvili's direction, the management team has been composed of the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General, DSG. This structure was in accordance with the staff rules of the institution. The post of deputy was given to a competitor from Colombia in the 2017 election in exchange for his support to Mr. Pololikashvili after the first ballot. This first phase did not last long. The freshly nominated DSG was quickly marginalized by the new SG and his entourage and encouraged to leave his job. A new management structure, composed of the SG and 3 executive directors, was then put in place. This choice has proved to be costly, bureaucratic, and inefficient. It is not following the staff rules. Since 2017, the staff has remained more or less stable, around 100. But an important turnover has taken place. Many experienced and capable employees were forced to leave or retire early. They were replaced by incomers recruited in a way that respected only formally the publication of a declaration of vacancy of the post but not the rest of the process. The result was that many very qualified candidates were not aware that the post to which they were applying had already been attributed behind closed doors. Many of the recruitments were the result of a personal choice by the Secretary General, often for political reasons and not based on the candidate's technical qualifications and expertise. In the meantime, the salary scale has moved upward either to recruit friends at high positions or to encourage the personal loyalty of other staff members. As a result, staff costs have substantially increased. Even if it is customary to maintain some flexibility in staff management, the proportion of unbudgeted staff posts -24 out of 106 is much too high. This results from the desire to recruit collaborators without respecting any rule. His decision, taken just after his arrival, to contract an external audit firm to clean up the staff from those supposed to be his enemies gave an outlook on the new SG's management style. The auditors interrogated everyone, inspected offices and personal belongings, and listened in on telephone calls. The Director of Administration and Finance, and Chief Procurement Officer, of the organization was sidelined on the contract with the audit company and objected to it since no tender had taken place. He was immediately fired, and the Chief of Information and Communications Technology followed suit. Both of them appealed to the Administrative Tribunal of the International Labour Organization. They won, and UNWTO had to pay them €624,000 in compensation. They also suffered additional heavy expenses for the procedure, let alone reputational costs and an impact on staff morale, as a culture of opacity and arbitrary management was implemented, repeatedly reflected in the ethics officer's annual reports. These money and resources would have been better used to provide services to the members. The excessive weight of staff costs is one reason for the organization's fragile financial situation. The organization has many difficulties in balancing its budget, even formally. The contributions paid by the member states amount to only half of the total income, which does not reflect a sound and sustainable state of affairs. By losing its attractiveness and the value it provides, the UNWTO is experiencing increasing difficulties in collecting the arrears contributions due by its members. This will worsen. Facing an uncertain financial situation, the organization has been obliged to cut or scale down the activities of various programs, reducing the services provided to the members. It's a vicious circle. Many members ask themselves why they pay a contribution if, in exchange, they receive no benefit. 3. Relations with the members and representativeness of the organization. 157 sovereign countries are full members of the World Tourism Organization. However, many important countries, especially several OECD members, are absent. 15 years ago, countries like the United Kingdom, Norway, Australia, and Canada were part of the institution. They have left, and Zurab Pololikashvili has been unable to bring them back. Despite the announcement he proudly made, he has also failed to lure the United States. Unlike the other UN specialized agencies, UNWTO is not a truly global body. Its unbalanced membership is detrimental to the interests of developing countries, as the more industrialized and developed countries happen to be both financial partners and source markets of their visitors. Weakened by the absence of some major stakeholders, UNWTO is not in a position to pay special attention to the interests of the developing countries, a mission assigned by its statutes. To express its political support to Ukraine, a country, at the time, close to his own one, Georgia, Mr. Pololikashvili accused in 2022 the Russian Federation not to respect the statutes of the organization, forcing this important country to leave. The UNWTO was financially and politically severely weakened by this loss. Whatever their members could think of the war imposed by Russia on Ukraine, no other institution of the UN system nor the United Nations themselves did something of that kind. The SG and his team do not treat the member countries on an equal footing, as they should. The Executive Council members are clearly privileged in terms of activities, services, and recruitment. One country is promised a center for sustainability, a second an educational institution, a third a regional office, and a fourth a high-level post. In most cases, being awarded such a role is only a smokescreen with no real substance or funding behind it. This priority is given to the Council members' aims to facilitate the Secretary General's re-election. The issue of the regional offices deserves a short development. Robert Lonati, the first WTO Secretary General, intended an experiment when air transport was not as easy as it is today and the Internet did not exist. The tentative failed, since the organization had no resources, its host countries only supported the regional offices. The one who pays commands, and there was no reason for the offices to report to Madrid. The countries of the region never recognized any preeminence to the one where the office was located. The same considerations are valid today, and this second tentative is bound to fail for the same reasons as the first one. Countries such as Brazil, China, Morocco, or Saudi Arabia, which have received from the SG the proposal of a regional office solely to obtain their support for his campaign, should be aware that, as French people are used to saying, only those who have received a promise are bound by it. They will receive no money and no support. Morocco, with an office in Marrakesh, will never see Algeria recognize its supremacy. To complete the issue, let's add that Saudi Arabia was promised a regional office after failing to win the jackpot, the transfer of UNWTO under very obscure conditions of the organization headquarters from Madrid to Riyadh, a move of course unacceptable for the Spanish government, but that Zurab Pololikashvili had been pushing very hard to have the headquarters transferred. The representativeness of the World Tourism Organization, which was created in 1975 to become a partnership institution, is not better among the tourism private sector. There are around 400 affiliate members, and turnover is important. Many are joining, but others are leaving, and the number is stagnant globally. They receive no real services, and the only motivation for many of them is to mention their affiliation to UNWTO on their letterhead or business cards. Nominating a former diplomat, friend of the Secretary General, and not someone from the private sector to lead the affiliate members is part of this bad performance. On the occasion of the upcoming election, UNWTO must renew its commitment and vocation to building partnerships. 4. Call for a better World Tourism Organization. UNWTO must return to the core values that have governed its life until the present management took office. The forgotten principles should be used again: ethics, transparency, respect, dignity, intellectual honesty, fairness, tolerance, mutual understanding, and friendship among members and individuals. Ethics should prevail at every level of the institution, including in the behavior of the Secretary General and his team. He, like Caesar's wife, should not be suspected of any wrongdoing. He should not draw any undue benefit from his time at UNWTO. The same moral exigency must be demanded of his direct collaborators and team, whether inside the organization or in its relations with the host country. Governance transparency is a must. The members must be given fair, honest, and comprehensive information on the management of the institution. They should not discover when it's too late that the organization is facing difficulties. In the same manner, the recruitment of new staff members should be transparent and strictly respect the organization's internal rules and those imposed by the UN's International Civil Service Commission, ICSC. The external finance auditors should be given a comprehensive and non-biased picture of the real situation to provide the Executive Council with an honest assessment of the state of the finances. The staff must be treated with fairness, respect, and humanity. Impartiality should govern its management. No one should be sanctioned, pushed out, forced to retirement, or deprived of a deserved promotion because he or she is not close to the Secretary General. Promotion should be given on merit, not on favoritism. Grades and scales have to be granted based on the principles set up by the ICSC. Now that the moment has come of an alternance at the top level, what happened in 2017 should not be repeated. No witch hunt should be relaunched by those who have been recruited because of their proximity to Zurab Pololikashvili. Each of them should have a chance to continue serving the organization. Members should receive services not only considering the contribution they pay but rather considering them on an equal footing. Members of the council or not, proximity to the country of the SG or not, having voted for him or not at a precedent election should not be the matter. No one should be privileged or disregarded, and countries should not be divided into two groups, the friends and the enemies of the Secretary General. Efficiency should come first. The tourism sector and the member countries deserve a well-managed, modest, honest, effective, and swift institution. Excessive costs should be identified and eliminated. No useless external advisors or consultants should enter the headquarters premises, even for a temporary mission. The management should be strictly limited in number, not bureaucratic, and not financially burdensome. Duplication of structures and confusion in the missions and activities should be avoided. UNWTO must become attractive to developed and industrialized countries, those that were members at a given time in the organization's history. It's simply the survival of the organization which is at stake. Can you remain a UN institution when 3 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the United States, the Russian Federation, and the United Kingdom are not present? Designing and implementing intelligent and powerful activities relevant for those countries is essential. There should be a balance between the quality of the services provided to them and the contribution they would have to pay to make the decision to return. Finally, UNWTO has to play the partnership card to the fullest extent. It is the only UN institution and the International Labour Organization to have plural membership. The presence of private companies, local authorities, universities, associations, and NGOs is a plus for our institution. However, not enough value is drawn from this specificity. A Secretary General with strong experience in the private sector would be an asset for the World Tourism Organization. At the end of this overview, the conclusion is clear. There is no place for doubt or hesitation. The descent to hell of the organization must be stopped. The management of the World Tourism Organization just cannot continue as it is. The outgoing Secretary General, Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili, has been there for too long. He should not be proposed to the General Assembly for a 4-year re-election when the Executive Council meets in Madrid on 29 to 30 May 2025. The time for change has come. UNWTO must enter a new era. 6 candidates are running. 2 of them have a chance, the incumbent, Ms. Gloria Guevara Manzo from Mexico, and Mr. Harry Theoharis from Greece. Selecting Mr. Pololikashvili is likely to end in a deadlock. At the last session of the General Assembly, the host country, Uzbekistan, with the view of continuing the implementation of the ongoing plan of actions, proposed to renew the term of the Secretary General, which had not come to an end. WTN for Decency in the UNWTO Election. World Tourism Network, WTN. Background open letter by former UNWTO Secretary General Francesco Frangialli and Dr. Taleb Rifai. Dear colleagues and friends, we hope this message reaches you in good health in these testing times. We are writing to you today, in our capacity as two former Secretaries General of our esteemed UNWTO, having served in office for a combined 20 years. No indication of the duration of this new mandate was given, and no formal re-election process opened. To approve this incredible proposal, a two-thirds majority was needed, which was not obtained. This sends a strong signal from the General Assembly to oppose the proposal to extend Mr. Pololikashvili's presence at the head of the organization, illustrating the growing rejection of his policies, especially from countries that are not members of the Executive Council and which are under the impression that they are being forgotten. Therefore, in application of Article 22 of the statutes, a candidate proposed by the Council needs to get the same two-thirds majority to be elected by the Assembly, so selecting Mr. Pololikashvili presents a big risk for the institution. What should be done once the nominee is eliminated? This question has been raised frequently since the inception of UNWTO, and no answer has been found. Otherwise, our institution would enter unknown territory. The two other candidacies do not present such an uncertainty. Ms. Guevara and Mr. Theo Harris are two qualified personalities. They have in common to have been a successful Minister of Tourism of a major tourism country. Harry Theo Harris has also been a Deputy Minister of National Economy and Finance of Greece. Since a woman has never headed it, Gloria Guevara would bring fresh air to UNWTO. She also has outstanding experience in the private sector tourism sector, having been the President and CEO of the World Travel and Tourism Council. As said before, UNWTO needs such enrichment. Gloria Guevara has also been a high-level advisor to the government of Saudi Arabia, shaping sustainably the tourism policy of this newcomer to the world scenario. The Executive Council will make no mistakes in selecting Ms. Guevara or Mr. Theo Harris to become the sixth Secretary General of the UNWTO. Signed, Francesco Frangialli, Taleb Rifai.